She was just a single mom, but her secret changed a billionaire's life. The security camera in the elevator captured it all. A harried woman in scrubs juggling grocery bags while trying to keep her young son from pressing all the buttons. The irritated businessman checking his watch as the elevator stopped at every floor, and then the moment when the little boy's innocent question, "Mommy, is that the man from the picture in your special box?" caused the woman to freeze and the businessman to look up in shock. What the camera couldn't record was the earth-shattering realization dawning on both adults as they stared at each other, or how this chance encounter in a high-rise elevator would unearth a 15-year-old secret that would not only connect these strangers in ways neither could have imagined, but would ultimately heal wounds they'd both carried for years, proving that sometimes our most carefully guarded secrets are the very things that can save us when we least expect it. If you're already feeling the pull of this unexpected connection between two people from different worlds, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us how life's most meaningful moments often come when we least expect them, and how the truth, no matter how long buried, has a way of surfacing exactly when it needs to. Olivia Bennet was running late. Again. At 34, the single mother and pediatric nurse had mastered the art of perpetual motion, rushing from her hospital shift to the grocery store to her apartment, always moving, always slightly behind schedule. Today was no exception. After a 12-hour shift in the pediatric oncology ward, she'd picked up her 7-year-old son, Ethan, from the hospital's after-school program, then made a quick stop for groceries before heading home to their apartment in the Westview Towers. "Remember, just one button, Ethan," Olivia reminded her son as they entered the elevator in their building's lobby, her arms laden with grocery bags. "Floor 12. Ethan nodded solemnly, his dark curls bouncing. But as the elevator doors began to close, a voice called out, "Hold the elevator, please." Ethan immediately pressed the door-open button, and a man in an expensive suit strode in, his attention focused on his phone. He nodded briefly in acknowledgement before positioning himself in the corner of the elevator, creating as much distance as possible in the small space. Olivia recognized him instantly, though she doubted he'd ever noticed her. Jackson Reeves, billionaire CEO of Reeves Enterprises and owner of the Westview Towers. His penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of the building, and while residents occasionally glimpsed him in the lobby or garage, he rarely interacted with anyone. The elevator began its ascent, stopping at the 4th floor to admit an elderly couple, then the 7th for a woman with a small dog. By the time they reached the 9th floor, Ethan was growing restless. "Mom," he whispered, though his whisper was audible to everyone in the elevator, "is that the man from the picture in your special box?" Olivia's heart stopped. The grocery bag in her right arm slipped, sending apples rolling across the elevator floor. She barely noticed, her eyes locked on Ethan in horror. "What picture, sweetie?" she managed, her voice strangled. "The one with you at the beach. In the wooden box under your bed." Ethan's innocent face showed no awareness of the bomb he'd just detonated. "He looks like the man standing next to you." Olivia became acutely aware that everyone in the elevator was now looking at her, especially Jackson Reeves, whose attention had snapped from his phone to her face. His expression shifted from irritation to confusion to something unreadable as his intense blue eyes studied her. "I think you're confused, Ethan," Olivia said quickly, kneeling to gather the fallen apples, grateful for the excuse to avoid eye contact with anyone. "Mr. Reeves is our landlord. I've never been to the beach with him." But it was too late. She could feel Jackson's gaze boring into her, assessing, questioning. The elevator seemed to move in slow motion as it climbed to the 12th floor, finally dinging to announce their arrival. "This is us," Olivia said unnecessarily, ushering Ethan out. She risked one glance back as the doors closed and found Jackson still watching her, his brow furrowed in concentration as if trying to place her face. Once inside their apartment, Olivia set down the groceries and leaned against the counter, her heart racing. This couldn't be happening. Not after all these years of careful secrecy. "Mom? Did I say something wrong?" Ethan asked, his perceptive nature picking up on her distress. Olivia forced a smile. No, sweetie. It's just not polite to talk about people when they can hear you. Why don't you wash up for dinner? As Ethan disappeared into the bathroom, Olivia sank onto a kitchen chair, her mind reeling. The special box Ethan had mentioned contained the few mementos she'd kept from her time at Sandpiper Bay Resort 15 years ago, the summer that had changed her life in ways she was still grappling with. She had been 19, working as a waitress at the resort to pay for nursing school. Jackson Reeves had been 24, recently graduated from business school and celebrating with friends before joining his father's company. Their worlds had collided one evening when she served his table, and against all odds, they'd connected, spending stolen hours together during his week-long stay. It had been magical, intense, and completely unrealistic. When he left, they'd exchanged numbers but never called. Olivia had understood the reality. He was heir to a corporate empire, and she was a waitress putting herself through school. Their brief connection had been nothing more than a vacation romance. Until 2 months later, when she discovered she was pregnant. She had considered contacting him but ultimately decided against it. Jackson Reeves had a future mapped out for him, one that didn't include an unexpected child with a woman he barely knew. And Olivia had her own pride and determination. She would finish school and raise her child on her own terms, not as an obligation or scandal for a wealthy family. Now, 15 years later, through a twist of fate neither could have anticipated, they lived in the same building. Olivia had chosen the Westview Towers 3 years ago because it offered reasonable rent for middle-income families in certain units, part of a tax incentive program the building's owner had implemented. She had never imagined that owner was Jackson Reeves himself, or that their paths would cross in such an unavoidable way. Olivia was still sitting at the kitchen table when her phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. *, we need to talk. Penthouse. 8 p.m. tonight. JR*. Her blood ran cold. How had he gotten her number? Then she remembered the rental application she'd filled out 3 years ago, listing her contact information. Of course the building owner would have access to tenant records. She considered ignoring the text, pretending she hadn't received it. But the rational part of her brain knew this confrontation was inevitable now. Better to face it on her terms than have him appear at her door, potentially in front of Ethan. After dinner, Olivia called her neighbor, Mrs. Chin, who was always happy to watch Ethan for short periods. Just need to speak with building management about a maintenance issue, she explained, the lie bitter on her tongue. I shouldn't be more than an hour. At precisely 8 p.m., Olivia stood outside the private elevator that led to the penthouse, her finger hovering over the call button. She had changed from her scrubs into jeans and a simple blouse, her dark hair pulled back in its usual practical ponytail. No amount of clothing could armor her for this conversation, but at least she'd face it as herself, not trying to impress or apologize. The elevator opened immediately when she pressed the button, suggesting Jackson had programmed it to allow her access. The short ride to the top floor gave her just enough time to take several deep breaths, steadying herself for whatever came next. The doors opened directly into a stunning foyer with soaring ceilings and a wall of windows showcasing the city lights below. Jackson stood waiting, still in his suit pants, but with his jacket removed and shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms. He looked both exactly as she remembered and completely different, the boyish charm of his 24-year-old self now replaced with the confident bearing of a man accustomed to power. Olivia, he said, her name sounding strange in his voice after so many years. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? She replied, stepping into the penthouse, but remaining near the elevator. Your text felt more like a summons than an invitation. A flicker of something annoyance? Amusement crossed his face. Would you like a drink? No, thank you. I'd prefer we get straight to the point. Jackson nodded, gesturing toward a seating area with comfortable-looking furniture arranged to take advantage of the view. Please sit. Olivia perched on the edge of an armchair, her posture rigid as Jackson took a seat across from her. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of 15 years and unasked questions filling the space between them. Your son, Jackson finally said, his tone carefully neutral. How old is he? Olivia met his gaze directly. Ethan is 7. A brief calculation visibly passed behind Jackson's eyes. 7. Not 15. No, Olivia confirmed, understanding his unspoken question. Ethan is not your son, if that's what you're wondering. The tension in Jackson's shoulders eased slightly, though his expression remained guarded. Then I don't understand. Your son mentioned a picture of us at the beach. Olivia sighed. This was the moment of truth, or at least a version of it. I did keep a photo from that summer at Sandpiper Bay. It's in a box with other mementos. Ethan must have found it while looking for something in my room. She paused. But the timing doesn't work. Ethan was born years after we met. I see. Jackson leaned back, studying her. So it's just a coincidence that you're living in my building. Complete coincidence, Olivia assured him. I had no idea you owned Westview Towers when I applied for an apartment. I chose it because it offered affordable units for healthcare workers. I didn't even make the connection between Reeves Enterprises and you. Jackson nodded slowly, seeming to accept this explanation. You're a healthcare worker? Pediatric oncology nurse at Memorial Children's Hospital. Something softened in his expression. That's challenging work. It is, Olivia agreed. But rewarding. An awkward silence fell between them. Olivia shifted, ready to stand. If that's all, I should get back to my son. Wait, Jackson said, leaning forward. I have to ask, why did you keep the photo? After all these years. The question caught Olivia off guard. She had prepared for accusations, for questions about Ethan's paternity, but not for this simple inquiry that somehow felt more intimate than anything else he could have asked. I don't know, she admitted. That week was significant to me. It was the last carefree time before my life became very complicated. She offered a small, sad smile. Sometimes it's nice to remember who you were before everything changed. Jackson's expression shifted, a flash of vulnerability crossing his features before his composed mask returned. I remember that week too, he said quietly. More clearly than I should, given how brief it was. Olivia stood, suddenly needing to escape the dangerous pull of nostalgia. I really should go. Jackson rose as well, towering over her petite frame. Of course. Thank you for coming up and clearing things up. He walked her to the elevator, maintaining a careful distance. As the doors opened, he hesitated, then asked, The father of your son, is he involved in Ethan's life? Olivia's hand tightened on the elevator door. No, he never was. Something unreadable passed across Jackson's face. His loss, he said simply. The elevator doors closed between them, and Olivia released the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She had navigated the conversation without revealing her secret, the truth she had kept for 15 years, the reason she had never contacted Jackson Reeves despite having every means to do so. Because while Ethan wasn't Jackson's son, the child she had conceived that summer at Sandpiper Bay had been his. The child she had miscarried 2 months later, alone in her apartment, grieving not just the loss of the pregnancy, but the future it might have represented. She had never told anyone, not Jackson, not her friends, not even her mother. It was a private sorrow she had carried alone, eventually healing enough to move forward with her life, finish nursing school, and years later, welcome Ethan after a brief marriage that had ended before her son's 2nd birthday. As the elevator descended to the 12th floor, Olivia leaned against the wall, emotionally drained but relieved. The confrontation was over. Jackson had accepted her explanation. Life could return to normal. What she couldn't have known was that their conversation had stirred something in Jackson Reeves, memories and questions that would lead him to look more closely at the tenant in apartment 1214 and, eventually, to discover the secret she had kept so carefully hidden. The next morning proceeded like any other. Olivia got Ethan ready for school, dropped him off, and headed to the hospital for her shift. The pediatric oncology ward was busy, as always, with new patients being admitted and others receiving treatment. Olivia moved from room to room, checking vital signs, administering medications, and offering comfort to both children and their worried parents. She was in 7-year-old Lily Martinez's room, helping the girl with her lunch while her mother took a much-needed break, when a commotion in the hallway caught her attention. I don't care about the visiting hours policy, a familiar voice was saying, its authoritative tone brooking no argument. I'm here to speak with Nurse Bennett, and I'll wait in the family lounge until she's available. Olivia froze, a spoonful of applesauce halfway to Lily's mouth. What was Jackson Reeves doing at her workplace? It's okay, Lily, she said, setting down the spoon. I'll be right back. In the hallway, she found Jackson engaged in a standoff with the charge nurse, his tall figure imposing in another perfectly tailored suit. Several staff members were watching with undisguised curiosity. It wasn't every day that one of the city's most prominent businessmen appeared on their floor. Mr. Reeves, Olivia said, approaching them. Is there something I can help you with? Jackson turned, his expression unreadable. Nurse Bennett. I apologize for the interruption, but I need to speak with you. It's important. The charge nurse, Sandra, raised an eyebrow at Olivia. Do you want me to have security escort him out? That won't be necessary, Olivia assured her, though her heart was racing. Mr. Reeves is my landlord. I can speak with him briefly in the family lounge. Sandra nodded, though her suspicious gaze lingered on Jackson. 10 minutes, Olivia. Then I need you back with patience. The family lounge was mercifully empty, its comfortable seating and cheerful murals designed to provide a respite for the families of sick children. Olivia closed the door behind them, turning to face Jackson with her arms crossed defensively. What are you doing here? How did you even know where I work? Your rental application listed your employer, Jackson replied, his tone matter-of-fact. And I'm here because after our conversation last night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Olivia's stomach clenched. What do you mean? I mean, Jackson said, taking a step closer, that I spent half the night thinking about Sandpiper Bay and that summer 15 years ago. About how you disappeared without a word after promising to call. About how I tried to find you afterward, only to discover you'd quit your job at the resort with no forwarding address. This was news to Olivia. You tried to find me? Of course I did, Jackson said, a flash of the young man she'd known breaking through his controlled exterior. What we had that week, it wasn't just a vacation fling for me, Olivia. She looked away, unable to meet his intense gaze. It was 15 years ago. It hardly matters now. Doesn't it? Jackson reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a folded piece of paper. This morning, I had my assistant pull every record related to you from our tenant database, including the medical information form all residents complete, listing emergency contacts and relevant health history. Olivia's blood ran cold. The form. She remembered filling it out, listing her previous surgeries and procedures, including. You had a DNC procedure in August 2008, Jackson said quietly, reading from the paper. 2 months after we met at Sandpiper Bay. Olivia sank into one of the lounge chairs, her legs suddenly unable to support her. You had no right to access my medical information, she whispered, but there was no real anger in her voice, only resignation. Jackson sat across from her, the folded paper still in his hand. His voice was no longer authoritative. It was trembling. Olivia, were you pregnant? The question felt heavier than the walls around them. Olivia stared at the cheerful mural on the wall, bright cartoon animals that suddenly felt cruel against the weight of the moment. Yes, just one word. But it carried 15 years of silence. Jackson's breath hitched. And it was mine, he said quietly, not asking this time. Olivia nodded. I found out 2 months after you left, she whispered. I tried calling you. The number you gave me was disconnected. Jackson's head snapped up. What? That was my private number. I never changed it. Olivia's voice shook. A man answered. Said I had the wrong number. I thought you gave me a fake one. Realization dawned on Jackson's face. My father, he said slowly. He controlled my accounts back then. My calls. My contacts. If he thought something could damage the company's image. The truth settled between them like dust after an explosion. They hadn't walked away. They had been separated. I didn't want to ruin your future, Olivia continued. And then, I lost the baby. Jackson went completely still. How far along? Almost 3 months. He sat back, as if the air had been knocked from his lungs. And you went through that alone? Olivia swallowed. There wasn't anyone else. For the first time in his life, Jackson Reeves had no solution. No deal to negotiate. No money to throw at the problem. Just a loss he never knew he had. I have built hospitals, he said hoarsely. Funded research. Sat in rooms deciding the fate of thousands of employees. His eyes met hers. And I didn't even know I had a child. Tears rolled down Olivia's face, not dramatic, not loud. Just quiet release. I didn't want you to feel trapped. I would have chosen you, he said immediately. The certainty in his voice broke something inside her. For 15 years, she had carried the belief that she wasn't enough. And for 15 years, he had carried the belief that she chose to disappear. Both wrong. Both hurting. Jackson stood slowly. My father built Reeves Enterprises on power and image, he said. I built it on expansion and profit. He looked around the pediatric oncology lounge at the worn furniture, the tired paint, the parents sleeping in chairs. But I never built it on purpose. Olivia watched him carefully. What are you saying? I'm saying, he replied, voice steady now, that the child we lost will not be forgotten. 3 months later, the city gathered outside Memorial Children's Hospital for a press conference. News cameras. Reporters. Flashing lights. Jackson Reeves stood at the podium. Beside him stood Olivia, not as a secret, but as a partner in something bigger. 15 years ago, Jackson began, his voice echoing across the crowd. I lost something I never even knew I had. The crowd fell silent. A child. Murmurs spread. I recently learned that someone I cared about deeply faced that loss alone. And I've realized something important. He paused. Success without compassion is empty. Behind him, a banner was unveiled. The Sandpiper Foundation supporting single mothers and pediatric cancer families. A $500 million endowment. Family housing units. Free cancer treatment grants. Mental health support for grieving parents. Emergency childcare programs for single mothers. Reporters shouted questions. Why no? Jackson looked toward Olivia. Because some secrets aren't meant to destroy you, he said. They're meant to wake you up. That night, Olivia stood in her apartment balcony watching the city lights. Jackson joined her quietly. You didn't have to tell the world, she said softly. I wasn't telling the world, he replied. I was telling our child. Silence. Peaceful this time. Do you regret not knowing? She asked. Every day, he admitted. But I won't waste another one. He looked at her carefully. I'm not asking for the past back. I just don't want to miss the future. Inside, Ethan laughed at a cartoon playing on TV. Life. Moving forward. Olivia exhaled slowly. Maybe, she said, we can start with coffee. Jackson smiled, not the billionaire smile seen on magazine covers. A real one. Just one button at a time, he teased gently. She laughed through her tears. One button at a time. Sometimes secrets destroy empires. But sometimes, they build legacies. A single mother's hidden grief didn't ruin a billionaire. It gave him a heart. And in an elevator filled with spilled apples and an innocent question, a lost child changed the world.